Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology, now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Carnops, and this is the February Room.
You know, other than Bitcoin mining, the one aptitude that I wish I were more adept at is the art of taking a good picture. Alas, my budding photography career came to a screeching halt when an acquaintance dropped my Nikon loaded with slide film in the drink many moons ago, and the digital age rather passed me by until the smartphone came along, spurring the age of the amateur. But really great photography is as rare as it's ever been, and my guest today has one of those unique eyes for imagery that few shutterbugs possess. Abe Blair, welcome to the February Room.
Thanks for having me, Justin. Been a long time.
Yeah, man, it sure has. In fact, the last time I think I saw you, you had just wrapped up a morning session on the lower Deschutes. And it was, you know, one of those stretches in August where the fishing hadn't been particularly phenomenal by any means. I'd been struggling to find fish. Most of the guides I know had been struggling to find fish. It was just kind of one of those stagnant stretches of hot, you know, dry, sunny weather that's not necessarily conducive to good steelhead fishing. And we ran into you on the access road. And you were just coming out of I can't remember the name of the run. But anyway, it was on the lower access road there. And we were chatting with you, and you'd hooked 4 or 5 fish. I don't remember exactly, but it was.
I remember that day. That was still one of my best mornings, I think, ever.
So you do remember that?
Oh, yeah. Clear as day.
Okay, awesome. So that was like you'd caught more fish than like I'd seen in a week. In that one run, and anyway, you were fishing a real small bug, and that kind of turned the light on for me. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I need to be fishing smaller flies during these conditions, and from that day henceforth, I kind of instilled that philosophy into my repertoire, and it works, man. So thanks. You taught me something that day. That's just one of those little tidbits you pick up sometimes on the river that sticks with you.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you know, and I by no means, I sure as heck didn't come up with that idea myself. You know, another friend of mine, same situation, you know, gave me a couple of flies that's what's been working for him. And I remember that was like small, like size 8s or 10s, like
little bug, man. Very small. I mean, yep.
Huge river, pretty moderately sized fish. And then these tiny flies. And it was just like, really? But yeah. And I remember that morning, just getting that particular piece of water was always exciting because it was so sought after, but then to smash a handful of fish, and I think you were running around with Johnny Z.
Yeah,
and
right.
Johnny pulled over actually, and I think that's when I first met you, and I, you know, had heard your name and knew the lore, but I had not met you yet. So I was really stoked to share the water with you guys, and
yeah, that was really cool, man. Yeah, that little fly. I started tying a lot of my patterns just in a little like size 10, and you know, when the conditions were kind of stagnant, that works. That's a technique that you can kind of keep in your back pocket, man. And that was the first time that I talked to somebody, you know, mano a mano, that was like, hey, this is what I'm running in these conditions, and it's working for me. So yeah, that was a good tidbit. For sure.
I remember just overall on the Deschutes, I felt like I just continuously got lucky with great introductions and opportunities to work with some really great long time anglers from that river. And, they shared a lot of, secrets of theirs that had been learned over decades of fishing. So I think at that time I was probably working with the hazels at the time. And so that's where that small fly technique came in, which was definitely different than what the other bend guys were doing.
Yep, no doubt. And you were a whitewater guide originally, correct?
Yeah. I did overall, I think it was 16 summers consecutively on the Deschutes between whitewater guiding, actual guiding, like fly fish guiding, and then running camps, which I ended up being kind of my favorite.
Yeah, which is the best gig on the river.
Yeah, once I found out that you got equal pay and you didn't have to talk to customers until they were hungry and you were the one feeding them, it was like, yeah, this is a winning situation. And you got to fish all the water as long as nobody saw you. So
yeah, exactly. Yep.
It was a great job.
Yep, the camp water crook.
Yeah, I still fortunate to be able to do that nowadays. Actually, I get to the last 5 years run the camp program at a lodge up in Alaska in August.
Oh, cool.
So yeah. So still getting my hands pretty dirty and doing it different up there. Everything's got to fit on a float plane instead of a drift boat. We got to stuff it, camp into a couple loads in the beaver and fly it out and haul it, float it, move it. But it's fun.
Well, you got any good bear stories for us?
Oh man, countless. I mean, we live with them. I mean, I had a guest last year, really analytical guy, but he counted every day. And we ranged between 40 and 80 bears a day that we would see in a 10-mile float. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making any of this up, to the sense that it's a common occurrence to go to sleep to the sound of bears walking outside of your tent through the river 20, 30 feet away, and or a bear fight maybe on the other side of the river, so you're tucked into your sleep bag. It's starting to get dark and it's just like roar, roar, crashing waves, and it's just like, oh man, I gotta go to sleep. I gotta get up in like 5 hours and guide. And clients, I've had clients that won't sleep the whole night. They're just so stressed out.
So do you have like a bear fight app on your phone that you can put in there that helps you fall asleep at night?
No, it's just incredible. It's over the 5 years I've learned so much that, they just don't want to eat us. As long as we stay out of their way to get those salmon, it's just such a unique immersion that you get to be so close to what appears to be an apex predator that looks at us like a squirrel on the sidewalk, Just no big deal.
Wow, crazy, man. What rivers do you work on up there?
We do a lot of the trips, and the camping is on the Moraine, so just an icon classic. And then we've got a couple of other smaller rivers like the Gibraltar and the Copper River for trout. We'll fly over the Kwijak, and the Cami Shack is an amazing silver fishery. Quite a few different places. It's all fly out with boats stashed all over the place. So, morning and evening commutes in the float planes, and usually a day-long float, maybe a 4 or 5 mile hike.
Well, awesome, man. You've carved out a pretty nice little niche for yourself in this industry. So you're doing that through the month of August, you said? Yep.
Yeah, this will be my 6th summer coming up. Pretty excited about it.
But kind of your primary gig is photography, and tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, back in high school, essentially, I was already a passionate angler, and then I got a camera and a snowboard, and that was sort of the end of formal education in life. And rather shortly after high school, moved to a snowboard camp and started a business using the brand spanking new digital cameras that were coming out, and photographed the campers and would sell them pictures that we would print on site. and that kind of got me in the door at the industry. And so the summers were spent doing the snowboard photographies, and then I'd go back to the Deschutes in the summer, seasonally back and forth, and then kind of wore that out about 8 or 10 years and focused just on the landscapes after spending so much time in the backcountry. Just got to know it well and learn how to read weather well. And now I co-own with 2 other amazing partners, the largest gallery in Lake Tahoe. We got like 2,400 square foot, 2-story gallery, and it's just amazing.
Wow. And is the name of that, I went onto your website, it's called the Abe Blair, or the Abe Blair Gallery. What's the name of the physical gallery? The
physical gallery is called the Alpenglow Gallery. And it's myself, Doug DeVore, and Justin Majensky, 3 like-minded photographers who we've all lived here for a long time and had the opportunity to take over an existing gallery that had been there since 2006, take over their space. And so we scrambled, made a business plan real quick, and something we talked about on mountaintops for years, and put it into action last summer.
Nice. Awesome. And do you guys, now you're primarily a landscape photographer. I know you shoot a ton of different stuff, but your landscapes are spectacular. So is that safe to say?
Yeah. So I would say it's all landscapes, and any commercial photography that I have an opportunity to do is usually more of like a working vacation. Get an opportunity to take pictures for a fly fishing company or a TV show or something along those lines. So it's just sort of a side gig, I'd say.
Gotcha. So what's kind of your approach to shooting a landscape? Now, one thing I can stand behind is that smartphones don't shoot good landscape photos. So what's your approach? I know you were out shooting this morning before this recording. So, kind of tell me what you do. How do you go out and capture those insane images?
Well, like this morning there was a swing somebody had put in a pine tree that I saw on a hike recently, and I knew it lined up well for a springtime sunrise. So I went there first thing this morning, and just spent an hour and a half just sort of watching the light. I knew the area really well, so I didn't have to study much. I was just waiting on the show from the clouds, which turned out really well, and got a nice image. So super excited. I'll be working on it this afternoon when I get into the gallery. But generally my approach is looking for the photos that haven't been shot, going to the places that are familiar visually, but maybe not right where you're standing, or applying techniques that aren't used, have never been done, adopting newer technologies, things like that. I do a lot of the Milky Way photography, which is taking advantage of the low light abilities of these newer digital cameras, and that is a really exciting genre that is brand new to the industry, over the last decade.
Oh, very cool. And then as far as the fly fishing photography goes, now you do some shooting for a couple different outfits, Fly Water Travel, Catch Magazine, and a fishing show you were telling me about. Can you kind of explain that, what you referred to as a side hustle for me?
Yeah. Well, coming out of the Deschutes, I listened to your podcast that you did with Brian O'Keefe, which was great. And he always delivers. Well, growing up in Portland, Oregon, he was the guy. Everywhere you went, you saw his name on fly fishing photos around the area. So when he started the Catch magazine, I just reached out, said, "Hey, I'm a guide. I live on the river. I take pictures. Like, is there anything I can help with?" And I got a couple of little assignments from him, and that started a good relationship and got my foot in the door there, to the point where he ended up sending me to Chile in his shoes, because he was just returning from a different trip, and that introduced me to a lot of other people in the business and lodges, and then again, coming out of Oregon, the Flywater Travel Gang, Ken Morris and Dave Kalinowski was working there, and another gentleman, I think his name was James from Deschutes Angler, but just again a bunch of old Deschutes Bend, guides started a travel agency called Flywater, and so they reached out to me at some point to see if I wanted to do some photos for them, and that's how I met the owner of the lodge that I get to photograph and work at now, is through going on a visit with Flywater Travel, and then again just through association I met a gentleman who owns a TV show called Wild Fish, Wild Places. And so I started out as just a photographer documenting some of their international fly fishing trips, and was kind of in the background behind the scenes off camera, and I was always catching fish, and the host kind of was like, whoa, what's up with that guy? So eventually I got to move up to the front of the lens and co-host half a dozen shows a season now. And
oh, cool.
so yeah, we went to the Bahamas recently, Jurassic Lake, Alaska, all kinds of places. Just amazing. COVID really put a kink in things. We had a Africa trip planned and a Golden Dorado trip planned down in South America. Still hoping to get those in maybe next year.
Yeah. COVID's put a damper on the travel, but I tell you what it did for me and us is, man, we've explored a lot of places in our own backyard that we just never got to before. And, like you there, we're surrounded by water here, and just getting a chance to go out and go poke around stuff that you've always looked at on a map or heard about and never gotten around to has been really awesome. So there's a bright side to it.
Most definitely. Yeah, we've been doing the exact same thing for the TV show, just like, well, we can't fly, we can't leave the country. So we did a salmon fly trip on the Deschutes, which was fun. Revisited the old stomping grounds and called up some friends. Yeah, it's been nice. Just, exploring the area. We went on a golden trout trip last year. Yeah, definitely wouldn't have done that without the COVID, closures. And that ended up to be a great trip. It was really fun to check off that species.
Yeah, no doubt. You don't necessarily have to punch a passport to go have an awesome fishing adventure.
No, not anymore.
It's funny you mentioned Johnny Zanninati, and I'd forgotten that he was with us that morning. Did you ever happen to see, years ago in the Fly Fishing Film Tour, we had this little snippet in there. It was the final scene of Point Break that was reenacted.
I don't think
so. Did you ever happen to catch that? So the story behind that is we were in Kauai, and we were filming a Trout Unlimited show in Kauai. There's an actual TU chapter in Hawaii, and we'd gotten largely rained out of this production, and we hadn't caught any trout. We went peacock bass fishing, and so we had to pull the plug on the shoot, and we're sitting there watching it just pour rain. I mean, it was just a torrential downpour. And we're sitting there in the bar of the hotel hanging out. We got, now we got a day to kill till our flight leaves. And so we're sitting there, and we concoct this idea that we're going to go film the 50-year storm sequence, the final scene in Point Break out in front of the hotel in the ocean. And so we're in the process of putting that together, and who walks in the lobby but Johnny Zanninati? Unbelievable.
Classic,
yeah. So we hired him on the spot to play, the stand-in who's holding the umbrella and tells Keanu Reeves not to go down there because it's death on a stick. So you'll have to go back and look for that, man, and catch his cameo.
That's
he killed it.
Johnny Z, though, just he would just show up at all the right times and was always down for an adventure.
Isn't that classic Johnny Z?
Yeah. You make it back to the Deschutes much?
Man, I went there 2 years ago for the first time in a while. And, actually, I fished it last December. I went down and trout nymphed Mecca for a couple hours with a buddy of mine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really cool. I hadn't fished that stretch in a long time, and it was nice to kind of see it. It looked the same to me. I'd heard all these rumors of, habitat destruction and how you wouldn't recognize the river and everything. And so, it was December, but
Right.
but it looked the same to me, and it fished the same as it always had.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I think the only thing I've noticed when I revisit is, the eddy fishery just not being what it was due to all the osprey nests everywhere. But it seems to fish
Oh,
just
is that
fine.
right?
Yeah. Remember how you used to be able to just almost call it out coming around a bend and just be like, "Hey, everybody, look over at this eddy. We're gonna see feeding fish." And I felt like when I was running the river full time, I just sort of watched that disappear.
Huh? And you're attributing that partly to the abundance of ospreys.
I think so. Yeah, there was just so many habitats that were introduced to the area, and there's just a lot more osprey than there used to be.
Oh, interesting. Huh? I haven't
The
heard
fish
that
had
theory,
to kind of
man.
hunker a little more into the trees, so it made it just different. I remember catching a lot more fish in wide open eddies than nowadays, where you got to really get into the jungle.
Huh, interesting. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, most of the rhetoric I hear centers around the selective water withdrawal tower, of course, and the fact that that has killed off some of the bug life or altered the bug life, and so there's not fish feeding on caddis every day in the summer like there used to be, for
Yeah,
example. But that's interesting. The bird of prey thing may be a factor as well, huh?
yeah, that definitely. I mean, that started it, but that fish passage definitely is the front and center. Um, there. I remember I was still on the water pretty regularly as they were getting that essentially turned on and learning the program, and it was amazing how we learned how important that water temperature was. There'd be times where they would accidentally release a bunch of cold water, and you would have like the greatest steelheading you could ever imagine. And then you'd get off the river and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, whoops, yeah." It turns out they accidentally dropped the temperature to like 58 degrees, and it was 64 the day before. So the fish were just stoked, and
Right.
so it was interesting to see how they can literally turn that fishery on and off
Interesting.
with a switch there.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. We went and did a Trout Unlimited show about that whole project when it was still in the design phase, and it was it was one of those things. It was super interesting to hear the plan, the strategy, the science, the engineering, but it kind of left you wondering, like, wow, is this really going to work?
Yeah,
It seemed pretty daunting to alter the current of an entire lake, and that's just one part of it. I think the rise in temperature seemed like a side effect that maybe they hadn't accounted for.
yeah. I think there was a lot that was learned over time. I think they're still trying to figure it out a little bit, and I know that there's a lot of the local anglers are still trying to work with the dam management and try to find a good balance.
Yeah, I obviously it's closed now, but I felt almost a little guilty going steelhead fishing over the last few years. And I did go 2 years ago and caught a really nice fish and had a great time. But yeah, it's kind of hard to justify for me, and I'm not speaking for anyone but myself here, but to justify going steelhead fishing, even before they closed it, just given the low numbers and the fact that here I've been fortunate enough to enjoy some really great steelheading in my life. I don't think I need to be greedy at this point and go hassle these fish that are struggling to survive. Where do you where are your thoughts on that? Have you been steelheading at all the last few
I
years?
haven't. It's funny you mentioned that. So my last steelhead trip, I made the mistake of getting married at the last week of September, and then my firstborn was
yeah.
the first weekend or first week of October. So I really threw a wrench in the program for the sweet spot of steelhead season. But I went up to Canada to an undisclosed location and learned that we just didn't have any fish in the lower 48 and that they weren't mythological critters with, high education. We just didn't have any because we caught so many up in Canada. And then, and I have not swung for steelhead since. That was in 2013.
Oh, wow. You're on a real hiatus. Yeah.
It's just hard to motivate with so many other fisheries that are doing better in other places in the world, and just trout fishing, and I miss it. I was thinking about revisiting the water next year, just more as a nostalgic trip, just to stand waist deep in the water and walk for 30 or 40 miles. But I miss it, and it's unfortunate that there's just not the fishery that we got to have. Like the morning you were talking about when we met. Those were the days. Wake up early, run down from town, go smash 3 or 4 fish on a skater, and then go up, run a whitewater trip. I mean, that was living.
That was living, man. The whitewater gig, I wish I would have known how good I had it, because that was my first job on the Deschutes too. I was whitewater guiding for Ewing's Whitewater.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, man. I would go down and camp at Rattlesnake, and I'd fish every morning, go do my work trips, be back down there by 4:30 or 5 and hit the evening, and it was heaven.
Yeah. You get a couple hours in the morning when the shade was on the water, and then sun comes up. You don't want to go fishing anyway, so go make some money, get a tip, and then head right back to the water and fish that evening shade. And that was an amazing routine that I think I capitalized on it pretty well. I don't think I have any regrets of not fishing more, but I miss it. Those were fun days, and it's unfortunate to see the fishery no longer like that. I won't be taking my son on a father-son steelhead trip anytime, I don't think.
I know. It's kind of heartbreaking to think that way, but that's what we're staring at right now anyway.
Yeah.
Man, you've been a lot of places. Where you mentioned Jurassic Lake. What are some of the more? I know this question always gets people, and myself included. Like, where's your favorite place? It's where I'm going next. But but are there any events that stand out? Any fish that you caught, or shenanigans that you experienced that stand out from the rest in your adventures?
Every trip's got cool memories, and Alaska, I've been going there for so long as a snowboarder, as a photographer, as a fly fisherman. Alaska's just been the pinnacle kind of in those 3 genres. So I kind of lose track, but last I tried to count, I think I've gone to Alaska like 34 times in like 20 years.
Damn.
So I never tire of that place. Whether it's the same river or same mountain range I've been going to, or it's a new one, it's always a fun place to go. So I always get excited for anything Alaska. But recently we did
well, that's cool to hear you say that.
We did a trip for the TV show to the Ackland Islands, which is like the outer southern chain of islands in the Bahamas. We were like, I think 80 miles from Cuba. And really fun. The comfort of getting there was sort of, it threw us for a curve, because once we got on that island, it's 500 square miles of wadable flats with a population of like 300 people. So it was actually more remote than anywhere I've ever been in Bush, Alaska. What we had was, what was ordered that arrived on the boat, the month previous, and the exploration of that area was really, really cool. We didn't see another boat, not another angler, not another footprint for 10 days while we were there. So those are the trips that really get my juices flowing, and just self-guiding, having a spot.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Yeah, especially in the saltwater environment, not being yelled at or told what to do.
That's funny, man. That's I guess an idea, a belief, a feeling that more and more anglers have, that are experienced anglers like yourself and my buddies that have fished for a long time. They won't go saltwater guided anymore. They're
No.
like, yeah, well, if you can put together a trip where we can go fish by ourselves, yeah, we'll do it. And I feel really the same way too. I've had some awesome saltwater guided trips. Don't get me wrong, but
Most definitely.
Yeah, but even beyond the fact that some guides will straight up yell at you and take away from the experience. It's kind of fun to figure it out on your own and pass or fail based on just kind of your own know-how, which to me is somewhat limited, but it's sure fun when I succeed in the salt.
Yeah, and I think anybody like yourself and myself, the amount of years we've had a fly rod in hand, for me at least, like I look for the challenges. Like I don't fish the easy places anymore. Like I only want to fish if it's going to be a really hard cast or a tricky some sort of challenge. Like I want to still learn, and so I don't want to go to an easy fishery. And not that being guided in the salt makes it easy, but when you don't have a guide, it just does a whole nother layer of challenge that's really cool. It's just truly hunting by yourself. It's just I get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, so that trip to the Acklands, what all did you find there? Like giant bones, permit, tarpon, everything?
Not big bones, but like more bones than you know what to do with, and not spooked. Like I literally caught bonefish with just a leader cast on multiple accounts.
Nice.
And then, what really I fell in love with, and I'm sure you hear this, everybody talks about it, but the barracuda. I do not understand why that is not like the king of the flats.
Totally.
I went everywhere. Had an 8 weight for the bones, but I had a 10 weight strung up in the small of my back. And anytime you'd see a cuda, they just sit there. So you have time to switch rods, and we fished poppers. And I mean,
really awesome.
Yeah, the fight was tenfold of any steelhead. You watch a 3 foot, 4 foot long fish jump all the way out of the water and rip you deep into your backing on a 10 weight after a huge surface eat. I mean, it just didn't get any better. So I was really just all about the cuda on that trip, and can't wait for a return.
Well, all right, man. You got to throw me a bone on that one. That's my favorite thing too. And I haven't done a ton of cuda fishing. I haven't done a ton of successful cuda fishing, but I've done enough of it to know that it is. I agree with you. They're the ultimate. Like it's just like you said. It's so cool because they hover, and as long as you don't do anything totally stupid, you're probably going to get a pretty good shot at them. So you've got that awesome sight fishing hunting element, and the eat is insane. And then I've had them break my fly line in half. Bite through 30-pound tippet. They'll destroy your shit.
Yeah. Carrying, I brought a bunch of the tieable wire leader, thankfully, because they mashed through the wire leaders. Our flies, I'm looking at 2 of them right now that are hanging on my wall. That I got half a popper hanging on my wall, and the front half of it's just completely missing from the cuda on that trip. My office, I actually have like a wall of fame, so to speak, with flies that were from memorable trips all over the world, certain fish and certain trips that was the fly that signifies the trip for me.
Oh man, that's epic. Did you get like a 4-footer in, or?
Yeah, I think the biggest we put to hand was, like 25 pounds or so at, solid 4-footer. Smallest was maybe 3 feet. I mean, the smallest cuda was maybe 15 pounds, and the biggest was in the 20s.
Wow.
They were all really large fish. weren't spooky.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, you couldn't have asked for anything better. But the fight was, yeah. Once I got into the CUDA, I really just kind of gave up on the bones, and we're always looking for hermit, which we saw a few. But I look forward to a return trip, possibly this May, and I'll be die hard on the CUDA this year for sure.
Awesome, man. Sometimes they're just so damn smart they won't eat. Like I was in the Keys a month ago, and the CUDA there would not. They were not playing our game at all. It seems like sometimes, and I don't know if it's their mood. I know fishing pressure has something to do with it. We all know that CUDA are pretty intelligent fish, but they're quick learners. But I don't know. They're a lot. I don't know if you fish for pike much, but I do a lot of pike fishing, and they're similar to pike. Like, sometimes pike just are not in the mood for whatever reason, and then you can go back a day or two later, and the same fish will crush your fly as soon as it sees it. So
yeah. I did some pike fishing for the TV show actually up in Saskatchewan, and one day was just lights on. Just they were looking up and they wanted to eat anything on the surface. And you went back the next day and it was like, where'd the fish go? Just
right. And CUDA and pike are awfully similar in how they take the fly, kind of how they approach the fly. They'll follow it right to the rod tip. Sometimes you got to speed it up to get them to eat it. In both instances, they do that awesome full body eat and it's game on. And damn, they're both good eating. I know in those Atlantic waters, you're not supposed to eat them, but I've had barracuda in Belize and stuff, and they're delicious.
Yeah, I remember eating them in Belize years ago as well. We didn't eat them in the Bahamas, but we had them multiple times in Belize when I went down, and really good tasting.
Yeah, they've got it all for sure. Every component I'm looking for in a game fish, no doubt.
Yeah, I think these days that's anything saltwater. That's really what gets me most motivated is just it's just so much to learn and challenging and every trip I do I learn so much more and also see how much more there is in terms of the species and everything. It's definitely, I think, where I'm trying to spend more of my personal time, if I have any, is thinking about saltwater trips.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I know you got a lot to do. I won't take up any more of your time, Abe. What's the best way for folks to learn more about you and your work?
Probably just my social media and my website. I'm a really easy, accessible person to find, but it's just basically Abe Blair. You just type that into Google. But that's my handle on Instagram. My website is abeblair.com. So I'm pretty easy to find and really, like I said, really active on the social. So people enjoy, following along. This morning I did another story in a reel of time-lapse footage of me running around trying to get the photo this morning. And so, yeah, pretty easy to find.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.